I was hunting around on Reverb a couple of months ago and I found this awesome Les Paul Custom that needed to be documented because of a few unusual specs for a 68 reissue. So let's see if it's as nice as it looked in the photos. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. It's a one-piece flame maple top. How bizarre is that? So uniform and straight. Honestly, I forgot it was a one-piecer. There's always a bit of a delay between when I order a guitar and when I get around to making the full review and documentation. So you might be saying, hey Trogly, how on earth do you forget about a one-piece top custom? It's because of this. It's got a maple body, and it's beautiful, and the fact that it has the maple body means we also have the figuring along the edges, which is cruise control for cool. We also have a 5-piece flamed maple neck with 2 pieces of walnut running up the center. Now, you don't have any type of a volute or anything, but this is a really cool 68 reissue Les Paul Custom. But first, let's talk about the history of super fancy boy customs. The idea actually goes all the way back to the planning stages in 1974 for the Gibson Les Paul. This is the original super ultra Mac Daddy super crazy flamey everywhere Les Paul. You can learn more about its history in this episode, but to create these guitars, they have a mahogany core and then it's got a maple top like normal, but just like an ES335, you have a veneer over top of your mahogany body, and then you have these little caps of rosewood in the bottom position and at the top here to make it a little bit easier. They could do it in multiple pieces. So you have things like this and the original Super Customs that are built like this. The original maple-bodied Les Pauls. So outside of those two models, you really didn't see this get used again until the mid-2000s, when they decided to reissue the Super Custom. Now this one looks very similar to the guitar that we're documenting today, but Neil Schon ended up making that model popular, so they wanted to do some sort of a tribute to it. Another tribute model was the Les Paul 25, being a model to the 2550. Now they have done it just on the back. For example, check out the Dragon Les Paul for that. But we have not seen them do the laminate edges. In the mid-2000s, they decided, hey, it's just a lot easier to take a big old slab of maple here and just have a complete maple body. So it's not a mahogany core reissue, which is kind of a sad thing, but at the same time, it's very unique. But you can check out this episode if you want to learn more about the 2008 Super Custom reissue. It's got the stinger, all the other good stuff. I'm glad I ended up deciding to keep this one. But outside that 2008-ish era when they were feeling particularly saucy, occasionally you'll find a weird, quirky one-off where they just happen to have the wood, like this 2014 Les Paul Ultima. This one is completely chambered out. It's got the full-on maple body. It's not the veneers. This is a very, very, very fancy guitar. A little bit too fancy for some people, but I love this thing. So now let's talk about our main piece, now that we kind of understand the history. This was a run of approximately 30 guitars. Like, I haven't found any like super reliable sources saying that, but what I did find was on Lovey's guitar site, and it looked like a complete copy and paste from Gibson's original marketing of these. So it's somewhere around 30. I don't have any like firm evidence, but these are based on a 1968 reissue, and our serial number tells us it was done up in 2008 as well. So that puts us back to the time period when they were doing these style of reissues. They must have just had a lot of really nice figured maple laying around. They thought, let's do some solid bodied guitars of these. Now, when I say solid body, I mean the model itself. This one is actually chambered. So, unlike my Super Custom over there, it doesn't weigh like 12 pounds. It's actually quite comfortable. And I love custom shop chambered guitars. And previous to today, I had never seen Gibson do this again. I've requested them to do it on a custom order of a guitar I really wanted, and they said no. However, in 2024, in this wiring episode, we did see one. So will we see more? I don't know. Maybe that was a weird, quirky one-off. Maybe not. But these are just so fun and fancy. Now, if you're curious what colors these came in, there's this kind of tobacco-like sunburst. But I've also seen iguana bursts. That's the one I personally want for my collection. Not all of them are one-piece tops, though, but many were. You can also find some of these with the 5-piece maple neck in this era that don't have the maple body, that are still billed as 68 reissue customs. There's a really cool light antique burst one like that. Well, at least case, these are usually called 68 reissues. That's how this one was sold to me, but the paperwork just calls it a Les Paul Custom with LPF on the COA. However, it still has the ABR1 construction. It's got the correct style knobs. And here's something I recently learned about 68 reissues. They have a smaller custom block emblem on the headstock. Here's a photo collage I made from Gibson's website of them. It's really hard to tell. I mean, if you don't A/B it side by side, you're probably not going to see it. But these two triangles are ever so slightly smaller, and they have a slightly different angle to them. So I had a speech of how all this would be different from a regular 68 reissue. Like, normally you'd have a mahogany body. You wouldn't have the 5-piece flame maple neck. But I guess I don't really need to go into that because this particular COA doesn't call it that. But it's definitely not just a stock Les Paul Custom model. I think somebody just goofed on that. But there we go, all the super ultra fancy ones together. Now, does all the maple change the tones of these instruments? Some will say yes, some will say no. All I can tell you is they're beautiful, and that's why I enjoy collecting models like these. And now that I have these two together, it's actually quite obvious how different the finish is. I was kind of scared they'd be too similar. However, if anybody has the green one that's also done up in a one-piece top version, I would swap for that because it's a little bit more exotic and crazy and different. But I love how each of these, while they have something similar in common for all of them, they all have their own unique features. Like the abalone edition on this one with a heel cap. The smaller ebony heel cap over here, but with the rosewood binding abalone inlays. This guy's got the stinger, whereas this new one has the vintage style tuners for that historic look on the headstock. But to learn more about this one, let's go ahead and throw it on the workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs. Inside our flamey friend here, let's check out our specs. So I did not know what to expect with our pickups, but it's a Burstbucker 1 in the neck and an easier to read Burstbucker 2 in the bridge. The neck pickup sticker is just really hard to see. But in case you were wondering why I said earlier, these are the 68 reissue style knobs, even though most 68 reissue customs actually came with witch hat knobs, and that's what the current day reissue ones do. The 2000s were different. They used the reflectors, and they came typically with 57 classics, so this is kind of its own thing, but in this era, only the reissue customs had the long neck tenon. The regular customs were short necks. And again, since we have the post-mounted ABR1, even though the COA doesn't say it, this was definitely based upon 68 specs as the base build, and then they swapped everything else about it. But it is cool to see the neck joining into our body there. And then our bridge pickup cavity route, you get to see the flame all the way through it. However, this still does have a maple top. It's not just a straight up maple body. That was carved from full thickness down. That would be really cool. Have they done it before? I haven't personally seen it, but I'm sure they've tried it. If you want visual confirmation, here you go. You can see it in the thin binding in the cutaway. Again, another reissue spec, where the maple top joins onto the body. Although, the top does seem a little bit thicker than usual. Here's a photo compared to that super custom we did. This is another reissue spec, the black plastic output jack plate. But our readings within the circuit for the pickups, 8.15 k ohms in the bridge position, 7.68 in the neck, and the middle, 3.95. Everything is healthy there, with our 2 volumes and 2 tone controls, 1 for each pickup. Here's a look at the ABR1 bridge. It reads as such on the back. And once again, another reissue spec, lightweight aluminum tailpiece. And no, this one was not drilled for a pickguard from the factory. There's a pickguard in the case if you wanted to install it, but you might as well leave this one alone. But the story behind this one is I found it on Reverb one night from the original owner. He said he tested it upon receiving it and never really played it much outside of that. It was more so a collection piece. Now, with my detailed analysis and polish, is there some wear on this? Yeah. Like right here, there's a very small ding. However, it looks more like just a lacquer sink line with the wood. But there is a ding on the backside of the headstock, and a few minor scratches when you view it in the light just right. Although they are slightly deeper than just surface scratches. I was sad when I saw this. Somebody dinged a corner of the headstock into the ceiling or something. And there's a minor rub on the other side. And yeah, the back has like a few minor impressions. Is it enough for me to message the seller about? Nah, not really. Instead of mint, I would call this one very good to excellent. So let's take a second to appreciate the sides of this. You really have to hold this guitar in person because there's certain angles where it doesn't really look that figured, but then you get it in the light just right and it's like, yeah, that's a good one. The neck is especially especially dancing on this one, but we'll see that here in a minute. Being birthed in 2008, this is before all the rich light shenanigans, so you don't have to worry about that. Not that rich light is a bad option, it's just 3 years before they started using it. I didn't see any major areas of fretware. Frets polished up nicely. Maybe not the darkest ebony fretboard we've ever seen, and you definitely have some tooling marks going up and down it, but that's pretty par for the course here with our real mother of pearl inlays. So we've got that 24 3/4 inch scale with a 12-inch fretboard radius. Then our nut measure is 1.68 inches, increasing to 2.06 at the 12th. This neck is surprisingly chunky, 0.93 first fret neck depth, and 1.04 by the 12th. Here's a look at that neck profile, 1st fret and 12th fret. You can see it's rather skinny feeling up here, but then it definitely widens up a bit. Very rounded C-shaped neck profile on this one. I'm digging it. But now that we're looking at the headstock again, I don't think this one actually has the smaller inlay. I'm not sure when they started doing that. That might be a more modern day thing. Because that's the thing, the 68 reissues of the 2000s era, they weren't the most accurate. But the reissue customs, they feel so significantly different than the regular run ones. And that's not to say the regular runs are bad. These just have a different level of feel and quality and attention to detail to them, in my opinion. It mainly comes down to the neck. But here's a look at our truss rod cover. It's the historic style, so again, another reason why this one's most likely a 68, despite the COA not saying as such, because it's got that wide white beveled edge. Truss rod's in perfect shape, far from maxed out, turns both directions just fine. And again, take special note of the vintage style clusins that were put on here. But now onto the back of our beautiful maple body. I love this area right here on the side. It's just so heavily figured. And again, trust me, it dances in person. You just have to be holding it in your hands. It's quite the sight to behold. So we get the continuation of our teardrop burst shape. And here you can see you've got the historic style wiring. However, this is before they put reissue style capacitors in these. So it's just your regular stuff as far as that goes. But nothing looks like it's been toyed with. But the way Custom Shop chambers guitars is it's a continuous chamber all along and it connects. So if you drop a ball in here, it would eventually come out here. It just has a little block right here that you can put your bridge tailpiece and pickups in. Whereas Gibson USA, it's different. There's a chamber right here and then another chamber over there. They don't actually interconnect. I prefer Custom Shop chambers. So hypothetically, if they accidentally left a wooden sliver in the Gibson USA chamberings, you can't get it out and you'll forever have a rattle in your guitar. Whereas the Custom Shop, yeah, I mean, you could technically get it out. I haven't actually ran into that before, but then again, I don't think I've actually shaken many Gibson USA chambered guitars to find out. I'm sure they're pretty diligent there. But if you're looking for a smuggling guitar to hide your significant other's birthday present in, seek out the Custom Shop. But here you can see the chambers within it. It's just a hollowed out Les Paul. And when it's maple we're talking about, it's probably a good thing. It would just be so heavy if it was solid, but they do exist. But it's so cool to see this. The continuation of that flame pattern you see here just goes all the way through there and even into the body before they route it down to the next maple layer. This is your maple top right here showing through. But right here you can see that center block I was talking about. And of course we got to break out the endoscope. Because it's all made out of maple, do we see any cool figuring? Well, we do see a lot of wood grain, and yeah, it's almost like a center block right there, all flamed down. And then if we look up, you can see the figuring there, and then more continuation of the grain in our cutaway. Here's another good way to see it, how that area is carved down by our pots. And then what do we got going on down here? The continuous chamber, as we were also talking about, before we see some more flame on the edges. Yeah, that's really cool. We can make it dance on the inside too. And we see more of that as we continue on to our toggle switch down there. But we've got a strap button at the bottom and up here. And here's another look at our thin binding in the cutaway area. But now the neck. There's lots of 5-piece maple necks in Gibson territory. However, not all of them move quite as heavily as this one. Just happens to have that whole it factor. But the backside of the headstock reads Gibson Custom, and here's the backside of the Kluson tuners as well, before we get to our serial number dating it to 2008. But all said and done, how much does this one weigh? 8 pounds, 5.3 ounces. That's not bad. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how it sounds. Yeah, that is a very bright sounding guitar, but controlled. That's gonna sound awesome with distortion. But I love that neck pickup. Don't forget you can play with your tone if you don't want it that bright. So here it is at 10. Take that down to 7. Now to 3. Noticing it's really touch sensitive. Now that we know all about this really cool one-piece top flamed body 68 Reissue Les Paul Custom, what are my final thoughts on this thing? It's so ridiculously resonant, it's crazy. You feel the whole body and neck vibrate when you play this thing. And I've always been a big fan of these larger neck profiles. So for me, this is like a very nice win. It's got the unique body, the awesome one-piece top. It's a good color, maybe not my favorite out of this series. Again, I would love to have the iguana burst in my collection. We'll definitely have to keep an eye on Gibson if they start to make more of these flame maple body Les Pauls because they're so cool. It's not just pretty, it actually changes the tone. Now, whether that's for the better or worse, I'll leave that up to you. But you gotta remember, there's always the tone controls if you need to dial it back, so this could be like your secret recording weapon. But you know what? I guess there's the opposite of that. Instead of making them, super crazy flamey, maybe they could just take regular maple and chamber them out. I think there is something to that as far as an instrument that could potentially cut through the mix if you're looking for that brighter attack. I would love to see one of these done up with like a flamed maple fretboard just for fun. Maybe that's too much maple. But anyways, troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed checking out this absolutely stunningly gorgeous example. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.